Oh my goodness, can you hear me now, my dear scholars? Oh, we had some book squids in the unfortunately in our systems here. Oh my goodness. Wonder how that happened. Oh, let me do that again. Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of greeting across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear scholars, to the study. Oh my goodness, we have raiders right off the bat. Oh, thank you for the raid, Crusader Corrupted. Hello there, Dr. Zadium. Hello there, Julian20. Hello there, Private Maverick. Hello there, ID10. Welcome to the study. Hello there, Raucous. Welcome to the study as well. I hope all you enjoy your time here, and I am very happy to see you all, and I am very humbled to have you here as well. Oh my goodness. Ah, well, I hope you're all doing well this fine, fine day, or evening, or afternoon, or whatever time zone you're in. You might not know it, but the study is a timeless location, so it may be whatever time you are there. Crusader Corrupted, it happens to the best of us. Well, that's good to hear. Not that I can say I'm the best of us, but still, um, I'm not sure how that happened. Excuse me, getting some hydration right off the bat. I'm gonna have to discard that. Yeah. 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 Excuse me. Ugh. My goodness. Anyway, Julian20, fabulous beyond words. Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear it. I'm always glad to see my wonderful scholars in good moods. And if you're not having a good day, I hope this stream will help you feel better. These streams are all for you, my dear scholars, and I'm so happy when any of you show up for them. Thank you. So then, so. Um, so on my end, not much has been happening other than that little flub, which I'm glad we dealt with. Horace and I have just been putting things together once again, trying to live our lives in the study, putting away books, reading, preparing things for future streams. Yes, indeed. But oh, tonight we're doing another reading stream. Ah, my dear scholars. For all those who have come in, for those who don't know what we've been doing, we have been reading L. Frank Baum's The Sea Fairies. Um, I'm sure some of you have heard of L. Frank Baum, or at least you've heard of The Wizard of Oz, which is probably his most famous piece of literature. Excuse me. But what you might not know is that he actually wrote quite a bit of other works too. Wizard of Oz was his most famous, but he did write a lot of different other fantasy books and some non-fantasy as well under other names. But the one we've been reading is called The Sea Fairies, which was his attempt to start up a brand new series of books. There were two in the series, The Sea Fairies and Sky Island, which I also have somewhere. And it was a series of books starring Trot and Captain Bill, who are from California, and they encounter all these magical locations and magical instances. The books themselves didn't sell as well as Baum had hoped or the publishers, so Baum eventually just, said okay and put Trot and Captain Bill in the Oz books with the Scarecrow of Oz. And that was the start of that. But for now, we have been reading The Sea Fairies. And I am going to reiterate what will be happening with the next two streams. Um, we will be reading 3 chapters tonight. There are 6 chapters left in the book. We'll be reading 3 chapters tonight. we might have room time for some other little stories if I've got the time for it. And then we will be reading the final three chapters next reading stream. Does that sound to your liking, my dear scholars? At least I hope so. Yes. Oh, hello! Thank you. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Maginet for the follow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and welcome to the study, and welcome our new scholar. Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. We welcome you to the study with open arms, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's story. So, my dear scholar, I was gonna say, are we ready to hear the story? Private Maverick is ready to hear the story, so I take that as a sign that maybe I should be quiet and just get on with the reading. Mm. The other thing for all you new scholars, I don't do straight readings. I like to do what some may call dramatic readings, so you will hear me do voices for all the characters. I will attempt to make each one unique, but once in a while I do tend to reuse voices. So then, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage, and let us read The Sea Fairies by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 17. The Queen's Golden Sword. Goodness me! Exclaimed Trot, raising herself by a flirt of her pink-scaled tail and a wave of her fins. Isn't it dreadful hot here? The mermaids had risen at the same time, and Cap'n Bill came swimming in from the peony room in time to hear the little girl's speech. Hot? Echoed the sailor. Why, I feel like the inside of a steam engine. The perspiration was rolling down his round red face, and he took out his handkerchief and carefully wiped it away, waving his fishtail gently at the same time. What we need most in this room, said he, is a fan. What's the trouble, do you suppose? Inquired Trot. It is another trick of the monster Zog, answered the Queen calmly. He has made the water in our room boiling hot, and if it could touch us, we would be well cooked by this time. Even as it is, we are all made uncomfortable by breathing the heated air. Oh, I should have done a quick summary. Summarization, Trot and Cap'n Bill are visiting with the mermaids, and they have been kidnapped by the dreadful sea wizard Zog, who wants to destroy them all because he is a massive jerk on a scale that I have never encountered in a book. Oh, and Zog has a whole bunch of enslaved sailors who he has really kind of broken them mentally. It's really quite twisted. What shall we do, ma'am? The sailor-man asked, with a groan. I expected to get into hot water afore we're done with this foolishness, but I don't like the feel o' being parboiled just the same. The Queen was waving her fairy wand, and paid no attention to Cap'n Bill's moans. Already the water felt cooler, and they began to breathe more easily. In a few moments more, the heat had passed from the surrounding water altogether, and all danger from this source was over. This is better, said Trot gratefully. Do you care to sleep again? Asked the Queen. No, I'm wide awake now, answered the child. I'm afraid if I go to sleep again, I'll wake up a pot roast, said Cap'n Bill. Let us consider ways to escape, suggested Clea. It seems useless for us to remain here, quietly, until Zog discovers a way to destroy us. But we must not blunder, added Aquamarine cautiously. To fail in our attempt would be to acknowledge Zog's superior power. So we must think well upon our plan before we begin to carry it out. What do you advise, sir? She asked, turning to Captain Bill.
My opinion, ma'am, is that the only way for us to escape is to get out of here, was the sailor's vague answer. How to do it is your business, seeing as I ain't no fairy myself, either in looks or in education.
I love the dialect in this. It's so fun to read. The Queen smiled and said to Trot, "What is your opinion, my dear?"
I think we might swim out the same way we came in,
answered the child.
if we could get Sacho to lead us back through the maze, we would follow that long tunnel to the open ocean and there would be the sea devils waiting for us,
added Cap'n Bill, with a shake of his bald head.
They'd drive us back into the tunnel, like they did the first time, Trot. It won't do, mate. It won't do.
Have you a suggestion, Clea?
I have a thought of an undertaking,
replied the pretty princess. But it is a bold plan, your majesty, and you may not care to risk it. Let us hear it anyway, said Ocarine encouragingly. Mm. It is to destroy Zog himself and put him out of the world forever, and then we would be free to go home whenever we pleased. Can you suggest a way to destroy Zog? Asked Ocarine. No, your majesty, Clea answered. I must leave the way for you to determine. In the old days, said the queen thoughtfully, the mighty King Anko could not destroy this monster. He succeeded in defeating Zog and drove him into this great cavern. But even Anko could not destroy him. I have heard the sea serpent explain that it was because he could not reach the magician, returned Clea. If King Anko could have seized Zog in his coils, he would have made an end of the wicked monster quickly. Zog knows this, and that is why he does not dare to venture forth from his retreat. Anko is the enemy he constantly dreads. But with you, my queen, the case is different. You may easily reach Zog, and the only question is whether your power is sufficient to destroy him. For a while, Ocarine remained silent. I am not sure of my power over Zog, she said at last, and for that reason I hesitate to attack him personally. His slaves and his allies, the sea devils, I can easily conquer. Where am I? So I prefer to find a way to overcome the guards at the entrances, rather than to encounter their terrible master. But even the gods have been given strength and power by the magician, as we have already discovered, so I must procure a weapon with which to fight them.
A weapon, ma'am,
said Cap'n Bill, and then he took a jackknife from his coat pocket and opened the big blade, afterward handing it to the queen.
That ain't a bad weapon, he announced.
But it is useless in this case, she replied, smiling at the old sailor's earnestness. Excuse me. For my purpose, I must have a golden sword.
Well, there's plenty of gold around this castle, said Trot, looking around her. Even in this room there's enough to make 100 gold swords. But we can't melt or forge gold underwater, mate, the captain said.
Why not? Don't you suppose all these gold roses and things were made underwater? Asked the little girl.
Like enough, admitted the sailor, but I don't see how.
Just then the gong at their door sounded, and the boy Sacho came in, smiling and cheerful as ever. He said Zog had sent him to inquire after their health and happiness. You may tell him that his water became a trifle too warm, so we cooled it, replied the queen. Then they told Sacho how the boiling water had made them uncomfortable while they slept. Sacho whistled a little tune and seemed thoughtful.
Zog is foolish, said he. How often have I told him that vengeance is but a waste of time? He is worried to know how to destroy you, and that is wasting more time. You are worried for fear he will injure you, and so you are also wasting time. My, what a waste of time is going on in this castle. Seems to me that we have so much time, it doesn't matter, said Trot. What's time for, anyhow? Time is given to be happy, and for no other reason,
replied the boy soberly. Oh, hello there, anime veteran. Welcome. Dane, so much wasted time. Yes, indeed, so much wasted time. Welcome, welcome. We are in the middle of reading the Sea Fairies. Oh, where was I?
Time is given us to be happy, and for no other reason,
replied the boy somberly.
When we waste time, we waste happiness. But there is no time for preaching, so I'll go.
Please wait a moment, Sacho, said the queen.
Can I do anything to make you happy?
He asked, smiling again. Yes, answered Ocarine. We are curious to know who does all this beautiful gold work and ornamentation.
Some of the slaves here are goldsmiths, having been taught by Zog to forge and work metal underwater,
explained Sacho.
In parts of the ocean lie many rocks filled with veins of pure gold and golden nuggets, and we get large supplies from sunken ships as well. There is no lack of gold here, but it's not as precious as it is upon the earth, because here we have no need of money.
We would like to see the goldsmiths at work, announced the queen. We get a little bit of some water again. Excuse me. The boy hesitated a moment. Then he said,
I will take you to their room, where you may watch them for a time. I will not ask Zog's permission to do this, for he might refuse. But my orders were to allow you the liberty of the castle, and so I will let you to see the goldsmith's shop.
Thank you, replied Aquarine quietly, and then the four followed Sacho along various corridors until they came to a large room where a dozen men were busily at work. The shop was flooded with the brilliant unknown light. Lying here and there were heaps of virgin gold, some in its natural state, and some already fashioned into ornaments and furniture of various sorts. Each man worked at a bench where there was a curious iron furnace in which glowed a vivid white light. Although this workshop was all under water, and the workmen were obliged to breathe as fishes do, the furnaces glowed so hot that the water touching them was turned into steam. Gold or other metal held over a furnace quickly softened or melted when it could be forged or molded into any shape desired.
The furnaces are electric, explained Sacho, and heat as well underwater as they would in the open air. Let me introduce you to the foreman, who will tell you of his work better than I can.
The foreman was a slave named Agagru, who was lean and lank, and had an expression more surly and unhappy than any slave they had yet seen. Yet he seemed willing to leave his work, and explain to the visitors how he made so many beautiful things out of gold, for he took much pride in this labor, and knew its artistic worth. Moreover, since he had been in Zog's castle. These were the first strangers to enter his workshop, so he welcomed them in his own gruff way. The queen asked him if he was happy, and he shook his head and replied, "It ain't like Calcutta, where I used to work in gold before I was wrecked at sea and nearly drowned. Zog rescued me and brought me here a slave. It is a stupid life we lead, doing the same things over and over every day. But perhaps it is better than being dead. I'm not sure. The only pleasure I get in life is in creating pretty things out of gold." "Could you forge me a golden sword?" asked the queen, smiling sweetly upon the goldsmith. "I could, madam, but I won't, unless Zog orders me to do it." "Do you like Zog better than you do me?" inquired Aquarine. "No," was the answer. "I hate Zog." Seems like a pleasant guy. "Then won't you make the sword to please me, and to show your skill?" pleaded the pretty mermaid.
"I'm afraid of my master. He might not like it,"
the man replied.
"But he will never know,"
said Princess Clea.
"You cannot say what Zog knows or what he doesn't know," growled the man. "I can't take chances of offending Zog, for I must live with him always as a slave."
With this he turned away and resumed his work, hammering the leaf of a golden tulip. Cap'n Bill had listened carefully to this conversation, and being a wise old sailor in his way, he thought he understood the nature of old Agagru better than the mermaids did. So he went close to the goldsmith, and feeling in the pockets of his coat, drew out a silver compass, shaped like a watch. Excuse me.
"I'll give you this if you'll make the queen the golden sword,"
he said. Agagru looked at the compass with interest, and tested its power of pointing north. Then he shook his head and handed it back to Cap'n Bill. The sailor dived into his pocket again, and pulled out a pair of scissors, which he placed beside the compass on the palm of his big hand.
"You may have them both," he said.
Agagru hesitated, for he wanted the scissors badly, but finally he shook his head again. Cap'n Bill added a piece of cord, an iron thimble, some fish hooks, 4 buttons, and a safety pin. But still the goldsmith would not be tempted. So, with a sigh, the sailor brought out his fine, big jackknife. And at sight of this, Agagru's eyes began to sparkle. Steel was not to be had at the bottom of the sea, although gold was so plentiful. Time for another drink of water.
"All right, friend," he said. "Give me that lot of trinkets, and I'll make you a pretty gold sword. But it won't be any good except to look at, for our gold is so pure that it is very soft."
"Never mind that," replied Cap'n Bill. "All we want is the sword." Excuse me. The goldsmith set to work at once, and so skillful was he that in a few minutes he had forged a fine sword of yellow gold, with an ornamental handle. The shape was graceful, and the blade keen and slender. It was evident to them all that the golden sword would not stand hard use, for the edge of the blade would nick and curl like lead. But the queen was delighted with the prize, and took it eagerly in her hand. Just then, Sacho returned to say that they must go back to their rooms, and after thanking the goldsmith, who was so busy examining his newly acquired treasures that he made no response, they joyfully followed the boy back to the rose chamber. Sacho told them that he had just come from Zog, who was still wasting time in plotting vengeance.
You must be careful, he advised them, for my cruel master intends to stop you from living, and he may succeed. Don't be unhappy, but be careful. Zog is angry because you escaped his yell maker, and the falling stones, and the hot water. While he is angry, he is wasting time. But that will not help you. Take care not to waste any time yourself.
Excuse me.
Do you know what Zog intends to do to us next?
Asked Princess Clea.
No, said Sacho, but it is reasonable to guess that being evil, he intends evil. He never intends to do good, I assure you.
Then the boy went away.
I am no longer afraid,
Declared the Mermaid Queen when they were alone. When I have bestowed certain fairy powers upon this golden sword, it will fight its way against any who dare oppose us, and even Zog himself will not care to face so powerful a weapon. I am now able to promise you that we shall make good our escape.
Good,
cried Trot joyfully.
shall we start now?
Not yet, my dear. It will take me a little while to charm this golden blade, so that it will obey my commands and do my work. There is no need of undue haste, so I propose we all sleep for a time, and obtain what rest we can. We must be fresh and ready for our great adventure. As their former nap had been interrupted, they readily agreed to Aquarine's proposal, and at once went to their couches, and composed themselves to slumber. When they were asleep, the fairy mermaid charmed her golden sword, and then she also laid down to rest herself. Seems like no one's in a hurry in this story. I mean, they're in so much danger, and yet everyone's either falling asleep or they're just talking about how they don't have to worry about anything. Anime veteran, having experienced the insanity that is fame magic in my current campaign, I can confirm a sword empowered by that would be terrifying. Oh, interesting. Well, let's see how Zog handles that. For those who weren't here, an interesting thing with this story is Baum equates the mermaids directly with fairies. He calls them sea fairies in this story and talks about, fairy magic and that, instead of having the mermaids be a separate thing. There's some other interesting things that, for those who are just coming in, might have missed. For instance, he explains that mermaids don't breathe using gills. They breathe because they create sort of a force field around themselves, which creates a pocket of air that they breathe. And it's the same reason why they can go through the water and they remain perfectly dry, not wet, because they're always having this little air pocket around them. It's an interesting take on the idea. It also apparently is how they're able to swim so fast through the water, and that is partially their magic, which again is very, very different from most depictions of mermaids. Excuse me. Chapter 18. A Dash for Liberty. Trot dreamed that she was at home in her own bed, but the night seemed chilly, and she wanted to draw the coverlet up to her chin. She was not wide awake, but realized that she was cold and was unable to move her arms to cover herself up. She tried, but could not stir. Anime veteran. So not aquatic, just incredibly anti-water. Yeah, basically. Basically, they are completely anti-water, which is such a bizarre idea. Then she roused herself a little more and tried again. Yes, it was cold. Very cold. Really, she must do something to get warm, she thought. She opened her eyes and stared at a great wall of ice in front of her. She was awake now, and frightened too, but she could not move because the ice was all around her. She was frozen inside of it, and the airspace around her was not big enough to allow her to turn over. At once, the little girl realized what had happened. Their wicked enemy Zog had, by his magic art, frozen all the water in their room while they slept, and now they were all imprisoned and helpless. Trot and Cap'n Bill were sure to freeze to death in a short time, for only a tiny airspace remained between their bodies and the ice, and this air was like that of a winter day, when the thermometer is below zero. Which is interesting because Trot's from California, so how does she know what a winter day below zero would be? I'm not sure. Well, from what we understand from her and hints, she lives on the coast of California. So I don't know if they get below zero temperatures out there or not. She might. I'm guessing she might be inferring from hearing about it at least. Across the room, Trot could see the Mermaid Queen lying on her couch, for the solid ice was clear as crystal. Aquamarine was imprisoned, just as Trot was, and although she held her fairy wand in one hand and the golden sword in the other, she seemed unable to move either of them. And the girl remembered that the queen always waved her magic wand to accomplish anything. Princess Clea's couch was behind that of Trot, so the child could not see her, and Cap'n Bill was in his own room, probably frozen fast in the ice as the others were. The terrible Zog had surely been very clever in this last attempt to destroy them. Trot thought it was all over, and decided that, inasmuch as the queen was unable to wave her fairy wand, she could do nothing to release herself or her friends. But in this, the girl was mistaken. The fairy mermaid was even now at work, trying to save them, and in a few minutes, Trot was astonished and delighted to see the queen rise from her couch. She could not go far from it at first, but the ice was melting rapidly all around her, so that gradually Aquamarine approached the place where the child lay. Trot could not hear the mermaid's voice sounding through the ice. Oh, Trot could hear the mermaid's voice sounding through the ice, as if from afar off, but it grew even more distinct, until she could make out that the queen was saying, "Courage, friends, do not despair, for soon you will be free." Before very long, the ice between Trot and the queen had melted away entirely, and with a cry of joy, the little girl flopped her pink tail and swam to the side of her deliverer. "Are you very cold?" asked Aquamarine.
Not very,"
replied Trot, but her teeth chattered, and she was still shivering. "The water will be warm in a few minutes," said the queen, "but now I must melt the rest of the ice and liberate Clea." This she did in an astonishingly brief time, and the pretty princess, being herself a fairy, had not been at all affected by the cold surrounding her. They now swam to the door of Cap'n Bill's room and found the peony chamber a solid block of ice. The queen worked her magic power as hard as she could, and the ice thawed and melted quickly before her fairy wand. Excuse me. Yet when they reached the old sailor, he was almost frozen stiff, and Trot and Clea had to rub his hands and nose and ears very briskly to warm him up and bring him back to life. Cap'n Bill was pretty tough, and he came around in time, and opened his eyes and sneezed, and asked if the blizzard was over. So the queen waved her wand over his head a few times to restore him to his natural condition of warmth, and soon the old sailor became quite comfortable, and was able to understand all about the strange adventure from which he had so marvelously escaped.
"I've made up my mind to one thing, Trot," he said confidently. "If I ever get out of here, this mess I'm in, I won't be an Arctic explorer, whatever else happens. Shivers and shakes ain't to my liking, and this ice business ain't what it's sometimes cracked up to be. To be frizz once is enough for anybody, as if any, and if I was a gal like you, I wouldn't even wear frizzes on my hair."
You haven't any hair, Cap'n Bill,
Answered Trot.
so you needn't worry.
The queen and Clea had been talking together very earnestly. They now approached their earth friends, and Ocarine said, "We have decided not to remain in this castle any longer. Zog's cruel designs upon our lives and happiness are becoming too dangerous for us to endure. The golden sword now bears a fairy charm, and by its aid I will cut our way through our enemies. Are you ready and willing to follow me?"
Of course we are,
cried Trot.
"It don't seem 'zactly right to ask a lady to do the fighting,"
Remarked Cap'n Bill. Cap'n Bill's the old-fashioned type, it seems.
"but magic ain't my strong point, and it seems to be yours, ma'am. So swim ahead and we'll wiggle the same way you do, and try to wiggle out of our troubles."
Another drink. Oh my goodness. Mm. "If I chance to fail," said the queen, "try not to blame me. I will do all in my power to provide for our escape, and I am willing to risk everything, because I well know that to remain here will mean to perish in the end."
that's all right,
said Trot with fine courage.
let's have it over with.
"Then we will leave here at once," said Ocarine. She approached the window of the room, and with one blow of her golden sword shattered the thick pane of glass. The opening thus made was large enough for them to swim through, if they were careful not to scrape against the broken points of the glass. The queen went first, followed by Trot and Cap'n Bill. And now they were in the vast dome in which the castle and gardens of Zog had been built. Around them was a clear stretch of water, and far above, full half a mile distant, was the opening in the roof, guarded by the Prince of the Sea Devils. "Oh, hello there, Sophia Ignace. Welcome! We are on the second of 3 chapters we are going to read tonight from the Sea Fairies. Maybe. I'll give you scholars a choice after I'm done with the next chapter. We'll see." The Mermaid Queen had determined to attack this monster. If she succeeded in destroying it with her golden sword, the little band of fugitives might then swim through the opening into the clear waters of the ocean. Although this Prince of the Sea Devils was said to be big and wise and mighty,
There was but one of him to fight, whereas if they attempted to escape through any of the passages, they must encounter scores of such enemies.
Swim straight for the opening in the dome,
Cried Akareen, and in answer to the command, the four whisked their glittering tails, waved their fins, and shot away through the water at full speed, their course slanting upward toward the top of the dome. Another drink of water. Sophia Ignace, good. I'm gonna get cozy. Well, good. Do get cozy. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Chapter 19. King Anko to the rescue. The great magician Zog never slept. He was always watchful and alert. Some strange power warned him that his prisoners were about to escape. Scarcely had the four left the castle by the broken window when the monster stepped from a doorway below and saw them. Instantly he blew upon a golden whistle, and at the summons a band of wolffish appeared and dashed after the prisoners. These creatures swam so swiftly that soon they were between the fugitives and the dome, and then they turned, and with wicked eyes and sharp fangs began a fierce attack upon the mermaids and the earth dwellers. Trot was a little frightened at the evil looks of the sea wolves, whose heads were enormous, and whose jaws contained rows of curved and pointed teeth. But Akareen advanced upon them with her golden sword, and every touch of the charmed weapon instantly killed an enemy, so that one by one the wolf-fish rolled over upon their backs and sank helplessly downward through the water, leaving the prisoners free to continue their way towards the opening in the dome. Zog witnessed the destruction of his wolves and uttered a loud laugh that was terrible to hear. Then the dread monster determined to arrest the fugitives himself, and in order to do this, he was forced to discover himself in all the horror of his awful form. A form he was so ashamed of and loathed so greatly that he always strove to keep it concealed, even from his own eyes. Excuse me. Hastily, but it was important that his prisoners should not escape. Hastily, casting off the folds of the robe that enveloped him, Zog allowed his body to uncoil and shoot upward through the water in swift pursuit of his victims. His cloven hooves, upon which he usually walked, being now useless, were drawn up under him, while coil after coil of his eel-like body wriggled away like a serpent. At his shoulders, two broad feathery wings expanded, and these enabled the monster to cleave his way through the water with terrific force. Zog was part man, part beast, part fish, part fowl, and part reptile. His undulating body was broad and thin, and like the body of an eel. It was as repulsive as one could well imagine, and no wonder Zog hated it and kept it covered with his robe. Now, with his horned head and its glowing eyes thrust forward, wings flapping from his shoulders, and his eely body ending in a fish's tail, wriggling far behind him, this strange and evil creature was a thing of terror, even to the sea dwellers,
who were accustomed to remarkable sights. The mermaids, the sailor, and the child, one after another, looked back as they swam onward towards liberty and safety, saw the monster coming, and shuddered with uncontrollable fear. They were drawing nearer to the dome by this time, yet it was still some distance away. The four redoubled their speed, darting through the water with the swiftness of skyrockets. But as fast as they swam, Zog swam faster, and the good queen's heart began to throb as she realized she would be forced to fight her loathsome foe. Presently, Zog's long body was circling round them like a whirlwind, lashing the water into foam, and gradually drawing nearer and nearer to his victims. His eyes were no longer glowing coals, they were balls of fire. And as he circled around them, he laughed aloud that horrible laugh which was far more terrifying than any cry of rage could be. And they actually have a little picture here. Unfortunately, I can't show the pictures that are in the book, but the picture of Zog is actually kind of terrifying. It really does look pure demonic. If you can find the copies of the books, the illustrations are very good. John R. Neal did the illustrations, as he did most of the Oz books, and so they are very, very evocative and very, very well done. The queen struck out with her golden sword, but Zog wrapped a coil of his thin body around it, and wresting it from her hand, crushed the weapon into a shapeless mass. Then Ocarine waved her fairy wand, but in a flash the monster sent it flying away through the water. Cap'n Bill now decided that they were lost. He drew Trot closer to his side and placed one arm around her.
"I can't save you, dear little mate," he said sadly, "but we've lived a long time together, and now we'll die together."
Well, that's a cheerful thing in a children's book.
I knew Trot when first we saw them mermaids, as we'd
Never live to tell the tale,
said the child.
but never mind, Cap'n Bill. We've done the best we could, and we've had a fine time.
Forgive me, oh, forgive me, cried Ocarine, despairingly. I tried to save you, my poor friends, but... What's that? Exclaimed the princess, pointing upward. They all looked past Zog's whirling body, which was slowly enveloping them in its folds, towards the round opening in the dome. A dark object had appeared there, sliding downward like a huge rope, and descending toward them with lightning rapidity. They gave a great gasp as they recognized the countenance of King Anko, the sea serpent, its gray hair and whiskers bristling like those of an angry cat, and the usually mild blue eyes glowing with a ferocity even more terrifying than the orbs of Zog. The magician gave a shrill scream at sight of his dreaded enemy, and abandoning his intended victims, Zog made a quick dash to escape. But nothing in the sea could equal the strength and quickness of King Anko when he was roused. In a flash, the sea serpent had caught Zog fast in his coils, and his mighty body swept round the monster and imprisoned him tightly. The four, so suddenly rescued, swam away to a safer distance from the struggle, and then they turned to watch the encounter between the two great opposing powers of the ocean depths. Excuse me. Yet there was no desperate fight to observe, for the combatants were unequal. The end came before they were aware of it. Zog had been taken by surprise, and his great fear of Anko destroyed all of his mighty magic power. When the sea serpents slowly released those awful coils, a mass of jelly like pulp floated downward through the water, with no remnant of life remaining in it. No form to show it had once been Zog the magician. Wow, what a nasty end! That's pretty graphic. Then Anko shook his body, that the water might cleanse it, and advanced his head towards the group of four whom he had so opportunely rescued. "It is all over, friends," said he in his gentle tones, while a mild expression once more reigned on his comical features. "You may go home at any time you please, for the way through the domes will be open as soon as I get my own body through it." Indeed, so amazing was the length of the great sea serpent, that only a part of him had descended through the hole into the dome. Without waiting for the thanks of those he had rescued, he swiftly retreated to the ocean above, and with grateful hearts they followed him, glad to leave the cavern where they had endured so much anxiety and danger. All right, my dear scholars, we can stop there, but we have actually a bit of time left. So, give me one second. I'm going to give you a bit of a choice here. So we have about, I've got about half an hour left or so, and we have, let's see, just do a little bit of math, which I am terrible at. We have 16 pages left in the book. So, my dear scholars, I'll give you a choice. I can try and finish the the Sea Fairies tonight. Sophia, you can always do a short stream today and save your voice. Yeah, it's that short. My voice is feeling a little bit worn out though. I will admit, finish it. Okay. We can finish it. I was gonna say we can either finish the book tonight, or I can save those 3 chapters for next time and do a short stream, or I can put on some fairy tales. Um, okay. Because of teachers' demands it. Ah, yes. Let me get hydrated, and we'll continue. There's not a lot of pages left. The next chapter is the longest one of this. So I guess we are continuing. But up to you if you think your voice won't be destroyed. No, I think I could manage. So, yeah, we got plenty of water. So I will continue then. Chapter 20. The Home of the Ocean Monarch. Trot sobbed quietly, with her head on Cap'n Bill's shoulder. She had been a brave little girl during the trying times they had experienced, and never once had she given way to tears, however desperate their fate had seemed to be. But now that the one enemy in all the sea to be dreaded was utterly destroyed, and all dangers were past, the reaction was so great that she could not help having one, just one good cry, as she naively expressed it. Cap'n Bill was a big sailor man, hardened by age and many adventures, but even he felt a lump in his throat that he could not swallow, try as hard as he might. Cap'n Bill was glad. He was mostly glad on Trot's account, for he loved his sweet childish companion very dearly, and did not want any harm to befall her. They were now in the wide open sea, with liberty to go wherever they wished, And if Cap'n Bill could have had his say, he would have gone straight home and carried Trot to her mother. But the mermaids must be considered. Aquamarine and Clea had been true and faithful friends to their earth guests while dangers were threatening, and would not be very gracious to leave them at once. Moreover, Kinako was now with them, his big head keeping pace with the mermaids as they swam, and this mighty preserver had a distinct claim upon both Trot and Cap'n Bill. The sailor felt it would not be polite to ask to go home so soon. "If you people had come to visit me as I invited you to do," said the sea serpent, "all this bother and trouble would have been saved. I had my palace all put in order to receive the earth dwellers, and sat in my den waiting patiently to serve you. Yet you never came at all."
That reminds me, said Trot, drying her eyes. You never told us about that third pain you once had.
"Finally," continued Anko, I finally, continued Anko, "I sent to inquire as to what had become of you, and Merla said you had been gone from the palace a long time, and she was getting anxious about you. And then I made inquiries. Everyone in the sea loves to serve me, except those sea devils and their cousin the octopi. And it wasn't long before I heard you had been captured by Zog."
Was the third pain as bad as the other two?
asked Trot. "Naturally, this news disturbed me and made me unhappy." of course, Uncle's ignoring her, said Anko. "For I well knew, my Aquamarine, that the magician's evil powers were greater than your own fairy accomplishments. But I had never been able to find Zog's enchanted castle, and so I was at a loss to know how to save you from your dreadful fate. But I had wasted a good deal of time thinking it all over. Thinking it, but after, yeah, sorry. After I wasted a good deal of time thinking it over, I decided that if the sea devils were slayers of Zog, the prince of the sea devils must know where the enchanted castle was located. I knew this prince and where to find him, for he always lay on a hollow rock, on the bottom of the sea, and never moved from that position. His people brought food to him and took his commands, so I had no trouble in finding this evil prince. And I went to him and asked the way to Zog's castle. Of course, he would not tell me. He was even cross and disrespectful, just as I expected him to be. So I allowed myself to become angry and killed him, thinking he was much better dead than alive. But after the sea devil was destroyed, what was my surprise to find that all these years he had been lying over a round hole in the rock, and covering it with his scarlet body. A light shone through this hole, so I thrust my head in and found a great domed cave underneath with a splendid silver castle built at the bottom. You, my friends, were at that moment swimming toward me as fast as you could come. The monster Zog, my enemy, for centuries past, was close behind you." Whew. Well, the rest of the story you know. I would be angry with all of you for so carelessly getting captured, had the incident not led to the destruction of the one evil genius in all my ocean. I shall rest easier and be much happier now that Zog is dead. He has defied me for hundreds of years.
But about that third pain, said Trot. If you don't tell us now, I'm afraid that I'll forget to ask you.
If you should happen to forget, just remind me of it, said Anko, and I'll be sure to tell you. While Trot was thinking this over, the swimmers drew near to a great circular palace made all of solid alabaster, polished as smooth as ivory. Its roof was a vast dome, for domes seemed to be fashionable in the ocean houses. There was no doors or windows, but instead of these, several round holes appeared in different parts of the dome, some being high up and some low down, and some in between. Where am I? Oh, there I am. It's easy to lose your place in these books. Out of one of these holes, which it just fitted, stretched the long brown body of the sea serpent. Trot, being astonished at this sight, asked,
Didn't you take all of you when you went to the cavern, uncle?
"Nearly all, my dear," was the reply, accompanied by a cheerful smile, for uncle was proud of his great length, "but not quite all. Some of me remained as usual to keep house while my head was away, but I've been coiling up ever since we started back, and you will soon be able to see every inch of me altogether." Excuse me. Even as he spoke, his head slid into the round hole, and at a signal from Aquareine, they all paused outside and waited. Presently, there came to them four beautiful winged fish, with faces like doll babies. Their long hair and eyelashes were of a purple color, and their cheeks had rosy spots that looked as if they had been painted upon them.
His Majesty bids you welcome,
said one of the doll fishes in a sweet voice.
Be kind enough to enter the royal palace, and our ocean monarch will graciously receive you. Seems to me, said Trot to the queen, these things are putting on airs. Perhaps they don't know we're friends of Anko.
The king insists on certain formalities when anyone visits him, was Aquarine's reply. It is right that his dignity should be maintained. They followed their wing conductors to one of the upper openings, and as they entered it, Aquarine said in a clear voice, "May the glory and power of the Ocean King continue forever." Then she touched the palm of her hand to her forehead in token of allegiance, and Clea did the same. So Captain Bill and Trot followed suit. The brief ceremony being ended, the child looked curiously around to see what the palace of the mighty Anko was like. An extensive hall, lined with alabaster, was before them. In the floor was 5 of the round holes. Upon the walls were engraved many interesting scenes of ocean life, all chiseled very artistically by the tusks of walruses, who, Trot was afterward informed, are greatly skilled in such work. A few handsome rugs of woven sea grasses were spread upon the floor, but otherwise the vast hall was bare of furniture. The doll-faced fishes escorted them to an upper room, where a table was set, and here the travelers were invited to refresh themselves. Sorry, got it just the way I'm saying. As all four were exceedingly hungry, they welcomed the repast, which was served by an army of lobsters in royal purple aprons and caps. The meal being finished, they again descended to the hall, which seemed to occupy all the middle of the building, and now their conductors said,
His Majesty is ready to receive you in his den.
They swam downward through one of the round holes in the floor, and found themselves in a brilliantly lighted chamber, which appeared bigger than all the rest of the palace put together. In the center was the quaint head of King Anko, and around it was spread a great coverlet of purple and gold woven together. This concealed all of his body and stretched from wall to wall of the circular room. "Welcome, friends," said Anko pleasantly. "How do you like my home?"
It's very grand,
replied Trot.
Just the place for a sea serpent, seems to me,
said Cap'n Bill. "I'm glad you admire it," said the king. Perhaps I ought to tell you that from this day you four belong to me."
How's that?
asked the girl, surprised. "It's a law of the ocean," declared Anko, "that whoever saves any living creature from violent death owns that creature forever afterward, while life lasts. You will realize how just this law is when you remember that had I not saved you from Zog, you would not be dead. The law was suggested by Captain Kidglove when he once visited me."
Do you mean Captain Kidd? asked Trot. Because if you do,
"Give him his full name," said Anko. "Captain Kidglove was—"
there's no glove to it, protested Trot. I ought to know, 'cause I've read about him.
"Good for you, Trot. Good for you." "Didn't it say anything about a glove?" asked Anko.
Nothing at all. It just called him Captain Kidd,"
replied Trot.
"She's right, old man,"
added Cap'n Bill. "Books," said the sea serpent, "are good enough as far as they go, but it seems to me your earth books don't go far enough. Captain Kidglove was a gentleman pirate, a kid glove pirate. To leave off the glove and call him just Kid is very disrespectful."
"Oh, you told me to remind you of that third pain,"
said the little girl. "Which proves my friendship to you," returned the sea serpent, blinking his blue eyes thoughtfully. "No one likes to be reminded of a pain, and that third pain was. Sophia Ignace, I love your voices so much. Aw, thank you. Anime veteran, what Sophia said. Thank you so much. I enjoy doing the voices. I always love reading with voices.
"What was it?"
asked Trot. "It was a stomach ache," replied the king with a sigh.
"What made it?"
she inquired. "Just my carelessness," said Anko. "I'd been away to foreign parts seeing how the Earth people were getting along. Excuse me. I found the Germans dancing the German and the Dutch making Dutch cheese, and the Belgians combing their Belgian hairs, and the Turks eating turkey, and the Sardinians sardonically pickling sardines. And then I called on the Prince of Wales and—"
"You mean the Prince of Wales,"
corrected Trot. Another drink of water. "I mean what I say, my dear. I saw the battlefield where the Bull Run, but the Americans didn't. And when I got to France, I paid a Napoleon to see Napoleon with his bones apart. He was—" Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the posture check. Sophia, anime veteran, who would have guessed turkeys were from Turkey? Yes, indeed. Excuse me.
"Of course you mean—"
Trot was beginning, but the king would not give her a chance to correct him this time. "He was very hungry for hungry," he continued, "and was rushing so fast toward the poles that I thought he'd discovered them. You know, I will say, if you could see the text in this, the amount of wordplay in this sentence is dizzying. It is all puns. It's just one line of pun after another. Oh, my punishment for my humorous. So as I was not accorded a royal welcome, I took French leave and came home again." Kinchan Hogglebug worthy? Sophia Wogglebug level? Yes, Wogglebug level. It's just awful.
"But the pain."
"On the way home," continued Uncle calmly, "I was a little absent-minded, and ate an anchor. There was a long chain attached to it, and as I continued to swallow the anchor, I continued to eat the chain. I never realized what I had done until I found a ship on the other end of the chain. and then I bit it off.
The ship?
Asked Trot. No, the chain! I didn't care for the ship, as I saw it contained some skippers. On the way home, the chain and anchor began to lie heavily on my stomach. I didn't seem to digest them properly, and by the time I got to my palace, where you will notice there is no throne, I was thrown into throes of severe pain. So I at once sent for Dr. Shark.
Are all your doctors sharks?
Asked the child. Yes, aren't your doctors sharks? He replied.
Not all of them,
Said Trot.
That is true, remarked Cap'n Bill. But when you talk of lawyers,
I'm not talking of lawyers, said Anko reprovingly. I'm talking about my pain. I don't imagine anyone could suffer more than I did with that stomachache.
did you suffer long?
Inquired Trot. Why, about 7,482 feet, and
I meant a long time.
it seemed like a long time, answered the king. Dr. Shark said I ought to put a mustard poultice on my stomach, so I uncoiled myself and summoned my servants, and they began putting on the mustard plaster. The 20 punishment for puns, lol. Kinshon knew there'd be a lawyer joke in there. Anime veteran Dane, a biting comment on medical care. Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. If you've read L. Frank Baum books, oh my goodness, the satire in them is just insane. I had to be bound all around. It had to be bound all around me so it wouldn't slip off. I began to look like an express package. In about 4 weeks fully, one half of the pain had been covered by the mustard poultice, which got so hot that it hurt me worse than the stomachache did.
I know. I had one once.
One what? Asked Anko.
A mustard plaster. They smart pretty bad, but I guess they're a good thing.
I got myself unwrapped as soon as I could, continued the king, and then I hunted for the doctor, who hid himself until my anger had subsided. He had never sent in a bill, so I think he must be terribly ashamed of himself.
you're lucky, sir, to have escaped so easily, said Cap'n Bill. But you seem pretty well now.
Yes, I'm more careful of what I eat, replied the sea serpent. But I was saying when Trot interrupted me that you all belong to me, because I have saved your lives. By the law of the ocean, you must obey me in everything. The sailors scowled a little at hearing this, but Trot laughed and said,
The law of the ocean isn't our law because we live on land.
Just now you are living in the ocean, declared Anko, and as long as you live here, you must obey my commands.
What are your commands?
Inquired the child. Ah, that's the point I was coming to, returned the king with his comical smile. The ocean is a beautiful place, and we who belong here love it dearly. In many ways it's a nicer place for a home than the earth, for we have no sunstrokes, mosquitoes, earthquakes, or candy shops to bother us. But I am convinced that the ocean is no proper dwelling place for earth people, and I believe the mermaids did an unwise thing when they invited you to visit them.
I don't,
Protested the girl.
We've had a fine time, haven't we, Cap'n Bill?
Well, it's been a
Yeah, excuse me. Gotta get the voice back.
well, it's been different from what I expected,
Admitted the sailor. I gotta take another drink of water. I'm losing the voices. Oh, thank you for the follow, Jake. Two? I think that's the pronunciation. Thank you for the follow and welcome, 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 new scholar, to the study. We are in the middle of reading The Sea Fairies by L. Frank Baum, and we are going to finish it tonight.
Our only thought was to give the Earth people pleasure, Your Majesty,
pleaded Aquarine.
I know, my dear Queen, and it was very good of you, replied Anko. But still, it was an unwise act, for Earth people are as constantly in danger underwater as we would be upon the land. So, having won the right to command you all, I order you to take little Mary and Captain Bill straight home, and there restore them to their natural forms. It's a dreadful condition, I know, and they must each have two stumbling legs instead of a strong, beautiful fishtail, but it is the fate of earth dwellers, and they cannot escape it.
In my case, Your Majesty, made it one leg, suggested Captain Bill.
Ah, yes, I remember. One leg and a wooden stick to keep it company. I issue this order, my friends, not because I am not fond of your society, but to keep you from getting into more trouble in a country where all is strange and unnatural to you. Am I right, or do you think I am wrong?
You are quite correct, sir, said Captain Bill, nodding his head in approval. Well, I'm ready to go home, said Trot. But in spite of Zog, I've enjoyed my visit, and I shall always love the mermaids for being so good to me.
That speech pleased Aquarine and Clea, who smiled upon the child and kissed her affectionately. Aww.
We shall escort you home at once,
announced the Queen.
But before you go,
said King Anko,
I will give you a rare treat. It is one you will remember as long as you live. You shall see every inch of the mightiest sea serpent in the world, all at one time.
As he spoke, the purple and gold cloth was lifted by unseen hands and disappeared from view, and now Cap'n Bill and Trot looked down upon thousands and thousands of coils of the sea serpent's body, which filled all of the space at the bottom of the immense circular room. It reminded them of a great coil of garden hose, only it was so much bigger around, and very much longer. Except for the astonishing size of the Ocean King, the sight was not an especially interesting one, but they told old Anko that they were pleased to see him, because it was evident he was very proud of his figure. Then the cloth descended again, and covered all but the head, and after that, excuse me, after which they bade the king goodbye, and thanked him for all his kindness to them.
I used to think sea serpents were horrid creatures, said Trot, but now I know they're good, and
big, added Cap'n Bill, realizing his little friend could not find another word that was complimentary. Another drink of water. Excuse me. Excuse me for a little animation there. Chapter 21. Let me reposition myself. King Joe. As they swam out of Anko's palace, and the doll-faced fishes left them, Aquarine asked, "Would you rather go back to our mermaid home for a time and rest yourself, or would you prefer to start for Giant's Cave at once?"
I guess we'd better go back home,
decided Trot.
To our own home, I mean. We've been away quite a while, and King Anko seemed to think it was best.
"Very well," replied the Queen. "Let us turn in this direction, then."
You can say goodbye to Merla for us,
continued Trot.
She was very nice to us, and especially to Cap'n Bill.
So she was, mate, agreed the sailor. And a prettier lady I never knew, even if she is a mermaid. Begging your pardon, Mom.
Are we going anywhere near Zog's castle?
asked the girl. Our way leads directly past the opening in the dome, said Ocarine.
Then let's stop and see what Sancho and the others are doing,
suggested Trot.
They can't be slaves any longer, you know, 'cause they haven't any master. I wonder if they're any happier than they were before.
They seemed to be pretty happy as it was, remarked Cap'n Bill.
It will do us no harm to pay them a brief visit, said Princess Clea. All danger disappeared from the cavern with the destruction of Zog.
I really ought to say goodbye to Brother Joe, observed the sailor man. I won't see him again, you know, and I don't want to seem unbrotherly.
Very well, said the Queen. We will re-enter the cavern, for I too am anxious to know what will be the fate of the poor slaves of the magicians. When they came to the hole in the top of the dome, they dropped through it and swam leisurely down towards the castle. The water was clear and undisturbed, and the silver castle looked very quiet and peaceful under the radiant light that still filled the cavern. They met no one at all, and passing around to the front of the building, they reached the broad entrance and passed into the golden hall. Excuse me. Here, a strange scene met their eyes. All the slaves of Zog, hundreds in number, were assembled in the room, while standing before the throne formerly occupied by the wicked magician was the boy Sancho, who was just beginning to make a speech to his fellow slaves. Here goes Sancho's voice.
At one time or another, he said, all of us were born upon the earth and lived in the thin air. But now we are all living as the fishes live, and our home is in the water of the ocean. One by one we have come to this place, having been saved from drowning by Zog the magician, and by him given power to exist in comfort under water. The powerful master who made us
Yeah,
the powerful master who made us his slaves has now passed away forever. But we continue to live, and are unable to return to our native land, where we would quickly perish. There is no one but us to inherit Zog's possessions, and so it will be best for us to remain in this fine castle and occupy ourselves as we have done before, in providing for the comforts of the community. Only in labor is happiness to be found.
well, I can argue against that.
And we may as well labor for ourselves as for others.
Yeah, I can kind of argue against that little sentence. Excuse me, another drink of water.
But we must have a king, not an evil, cruel master like Zog, but one who will maintain order and issue laws for the benefit of all. We will govern ourselves most happily by having a ruler or head selected from among ourselves by popular vote. Therefore, I ask you to decide who shall be our king, for only one is accepted by all who can sit in Zog's throne.
The slaves applauded this speech, but they seemed puzzled to make the choice of a ruler. Finally, the chief cook came forward and said, I don't even remember what the chief cook's voice was.
We all have our duties to perform, and so cannot spend the time to be king. But you, Sancho, who are Zog's own attendant, have now no duties at all, so it will be best for you to rule us. What say you, comrades? Shall we make Sancho king?
Yes, yes, they all cried.
But I do not wish to be king, replied Sancho. A king is a useless sort of person who merely issues orders for others to carry out. I want to be busy and useful. Whoever is king will need a good attendant, as well as an officer who will see that his commands are obeyed. I'm used to such duties, having served Zog in this same way.
Who then has the time to rule over us?
asked Agagru, the goldsmith.
It seems to me that Captain Joe is the proper person for king,
replied Sancho.
His former duty was to sew buttons on Zog's garments, so now he is out of a job and has plenty of time to be king, so he can sew on his own buttons.
Okay, interesting little logic there.
What do you say, Captain Joe?
Oh, I don't mind,
agreed Captain Joe.
That is, if you all want me to rule you.
We do, shouted the slaves, glad to find someone willing to take the job.
But I'll want a few pointers,
continued Captain Bill's brother.
I ain't used to this sort of work, you know, and if I ain't properly posted, I'm liable to make mistakes. Sancho will tell you,
said Tom Otto. Oh, I hate that name so much. That is such a pun. Encouragingly.
And now I must go back to the kitchen and look after my dumplings, or you people won't have any dinner today.
Very well,
announced Sancho.
I hereby proclaim Captain Joe elected king of the castle, which is the enchanted castle no longer. You may all return to your work.
Kintron, of course, laughed. Anime veteran Tom Otto. Oh, good lord. I know! It's such an awful pun! It's so awful! The slaves went away well contented, and the boy and Captain Joe now came forward to greet their visitors.
We're on our way home, explained Captain Bill, and we don't expect to travel this way again. But it pleases me to know, Joe, that you're the king of such a fine castle, and I'll rest easier now that you're well provided for. Oh, I'm all right, Bill, returned Captain Joe. It's an easy life here, and a peaceful one. I wish you was as well fixed.
If you ever need friends, Sancho, or any assistance or counsel, come to me, said the Mermaid Queen to the boy. Julian 20. Oh, I get it now. You only get it now? After all these readings, you only get the pun now? Oh my goodness. I must not be reading as well as I thought I was.
Thank you, ma'am,
he replied.
Now that Zog is gone, I am sure we shall be very safe and contented. But I shall not forget to come to you if we need you. We are not going to waste any time in anger, or revenge, or evil deeds, so I believe we shall prosper from now on.
I'm sure you will, declared Trot. They now decided that they must continue their journey, as neither Sancho nor King Joe could ascend to the top of the dome without swimming in the human way, which was slow and tedious work for them. The goodbyes were said at the castle entrance, and the four visitors started on their return. Julian 20, no, I am old. Ah, don't say that. I'm sure you're not that bad. Trot took one last view of the beautiful silver castle from the hole high up in the dome, which was now open and unguarded, and the next moment she was in the broad ocean again, swimming towards home beside her mermaid friends. Excuse me. I've got to get some better drinking situations here. Here we go, my dear scholars. Here we go. Chapter 22. Trot lives to tell the tale. Aquarine was thoughtful for a time. Then she drew from her finger a ring, a plain gold band, set with a pearl of great value. and gave it to the little girl. "If at any period of your life the mermaids can be of service to you, my dear," she said, "you have but to come to the edge of the ocean and call Aquarine. If you are wearing this ring at the time, I shall instantly hear you and come to your assistance."
Thank you,
cried the child, slipping the ring over her own chubby finger, which had fitted perfectly.
I shall never forget that I have good and loyal friends in the ocean. You may be sure.
Away and away they swam, swiftly and in a straight line, keeping in the middle water, where they were not liable to meet many sea people. They passed a few schools of fishes, where the teachers were explaining to the young ones how to swim properly and conduct themselves in a dignified manner. But Trot did not care to stop and watch the exercises. Although the queen had lost her fairy wand in Zog's domed chamber, she had still enough magic power to carry them all across the ocean in wonderfully quick time. And before Trot and Cap'n Bill were aware of they had come, the distance they had come, the mermaids paused, while Princess Clea said,
Now we must go a little deeper, for here's the giant's cave, and the entrance to it is near the bottom of the sea. What, already?
cried the girl joyfully, and then through the darker water they swam, passing through the rocky entrance, and began to ascend slowly into the azure blue water of the cave.
You've been awfully good to us, and I don't know just how to thank you,
said Trot earnestly.
We have enjoyed your visit to us,
said beautiful Queen Aquarine, smiling upon her little friend,
and you may easily repay any pleasure we have given you by speaking well of the mermaids when you hear ignorant earth people condemning us. I'll do that, of course,
exclaimed the child.
How about changing us back to our regular shapes?
Inquired Cap'n Bill anxiously.
That will be very easy,
replied Princess Clea, with her merry laugh.
See, here we are at the surface of the water.
They pushed their heads above the blue water and looked around the cave. It was silent and deserted. Floating gently near the spot where they had left it was their own little boat. Cap'n Bill swam to it, took hold of the side, and then turned an inquiring face towards the mermaids.
Climb in,
said the queen. So he pulled himself up and awkwardly tumbled forward in the boat. As he did so, he heard his wooden leg clatter against the seat, and turned around to look at it wonderingly.
It's me, all right, he muttered. One meat one and one hickory one. That's the same as belongs to me.
Will you lift Mayrie aboard? Asked Princess Clea.
The old sailor aroused himself, and as Trot lifted up her arms, he seized them and drew her safely into the boat. She was dressed just as usual, and her chubby legs wore shoes and stockings. Strangely enough, neither of them were at all wet, or even damp in any part of their clothing.
I wonder where our legs have been while we were gone,
mused Cap'n Bill, gazing at his little friend in great delight.
And I wonder what becomes of our pretty pink and green scale tails,
returned the girl, laughing with glee, for it seemed good to be herself again. Let me get another drink. There we go. Queen Aquarine and Princess Clea were a little way off, lying with their pretty faces just out of the water,
while their hair floated in soft clouds around them. "Goodbye, friends," they called.
Goodbye!
Shouted both Trot and Cap'n Bill, and the little girl blew 2 kisses from her fingers toward the mermaids. Then the faces disappeared, leaving little ripples on the surface of the water. Cap'n Bill picked up the oars and slowly headed the boat towards the mouth of the cave. "I wonder, Trot, if your ma has missed us," he remarked uneasily.
Of course not,
replied the girl.
she's been sound asleep, you know.
As the boat crept out into the bright sunlight, they were both silent, but each sighed with pleasure at beholding their own everyday world again. Finally Trot said softly,
The land's the best, Cap'n.
"It is, mate, for living on," he answered.
But I'm glad to have seen the mermaids,
She added. "Well, so am I, Trot," he agreed. "But I wouldn't a believed any mortal could ever a seen 'em and Trot laughed merrily.
and live to tell the tale,
She cried, her eyes dancing with mischief.
Oh, Cap'n Bill, how little we mortals know.
"True enough, mate," he replied. "But we're a learnin' somethin' every day." The end. Oh, so that is the end of the Sea Fairies. I'll see you all at the in our little chat room to finish up the night. Ah, there we are. Kidtron, clap, clap, clap. Thank you, thank you. Dr. Zadium, that was great. Ah, yeah. That ending was so sweet. It was a sweet ending. Union 20, ah, great story. Anime veteran, a fantastic reading. Thank you, thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you. You're all making me feel a little flustered. It was an interesting book. In retrospect, it started off very, very slow, and then once the plot kicked in, it got better. But that ending is so beautiful. It's so sweet and sentimental. And I know some people don't like sentimental endings, but it's such a nice ending to the story for Tron and Captain Bill. And I did say I do have the sequel book, Sky Island, but I'm going to hold off on reading that for a little bit so we don't get tired of the characters too quickly. I can feel my voice is a little bit worn out from the reading tonight, so I'm going to make this very short. So next week's schedule I have not fully figured out yet. Unit 20, thank you so much, Dr. Zadium. Ichiro Oda has entered the chat. I can't laugh. I shouldn't laugh. My voice is hurting a little bit. So next week we will be playing. I think we'll be playing a little bit more to the left for our Tuesday stream. Thursday stream will be another reading stream. I don't know just yet what we will be reading. We will see. This schedule, of course, is tentative. Things may change, so just keep your eyes on my Twitter. I will post it in Twitter the new schedule, or Mastodon if you're on that. Uh, yes, I think. Let's see if there's anyone we can raid tonight. Da, 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 da. Let us see. Okay. Um, I think we should raid Jewelry Jelly. She is playing Witchwood, which is a game that I have never heard of. But I think let's raid her to finish up this evening. So, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Till we meet again at the study. Take care now, and Bye bye.